Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this presentation. In this essay I'd like to talk about the moves by the globalists to prevent Western citizens and anyone other than the elites in effect of having independent means of transport. Now, this electric vehicles, and there's a whole lot of threads that are and side roads, if you like, are leading to the main intersection on this. And let's have a look at a few of those. One that I saw recently, which is pretty disturbing, is the globalists attempt to block off escape routes. Now, this is very much a bureaucratic game, this, and again, I'll come back to that in a minute. But what makes motor vehicles affordable for the masses, for most people, or for many people? New vehicles are expensive beyond the reach of more and more people now. Electric vehicles are quite expensive, not simply to purchase in the first place, and they are, but also the replacement batteries are horrendously expensive. And unless you've got an expensive solar array at home, recharging is quite expensive and also inconvenient. So there's not much to be said for electric vehicles, and even the price that these electric EVs are available today is largely due to taxpayer-funded incentives and special tax offsets and grants and handouts to electric vehicle manufacturers. If they had to compete in the open market, they'd be a good 20-25% more expensive than they currently are. So electric vehicles are not off to a good start. They're simply too expensive to not only purchase but to own. Now, so again, just mentioning, a lot of people can't afford new petrol vehicles, internal combustion engine vehicles. So second-hand vehicles are now really the preferred choice for most people. Now, it's interesting on the second-hand vehicles because there's the more reliable second-hand vehicles, even that may be more than 10 years old today, if they've got a reputation for reliability and long-term durability and so on, they're commanding some quite good prices. For example, here's a particular model of car that switched from a quite a reliable engine to a more funky engine, but one that was considerably less reliable. So a 20-year-old vehicle, the one with the reliable engine, can easily command prices of $8,000 to $10,000 today, used vehicle. Whereas a vehicle that's only 10 years old, so 10 years old compared to 20 years old, the 10-year-old vehicle is cheaper to buy on the second-hand market than the 20-year-old vehicle because of the considerable difference in reliability and hence cost of ownership. But I particularly want to focus on something that I've seen a few white papers floating around the traps, and there's a lot of talk, I think it's in California in the United States, is that what's making used combustion vehicles affordable for the masses is they can do a lot of the work. Owners can do a lot of the work themselves, and this makes a huge, like with an older vehicle, this makes a huge difference in cost of ownership. Now, there are two sort of areas for this. One is that you can buy OEM aftermarket car parts, and they can be a fifth or even a sixth in some cases the price that the major car manufacturers want to charge. For example, I recently just had to buy a dashboard switch for my older car here, and I like doing older cars up. So, and I've got all the tools and all the bits and pieces, but I can buy for $15, $20 or whatever it was aftermarket parts, and it's nearly $200 if I buy it from the fucking manufacturer. It takes a couple of hours to install, and I can do that work myself, or I got to pay somebody nearly $250. So it's the thick end of $400 to replace that switch if I go pay someone to do it, and I can do it myself for $20. So huge difference in cost. and thus a huge difference in the cost of ownership. Now you can look at that in terms of a whole lot of things. You know, if I want to go to the dealer as an example, or even a certified mechanic, just to change the oil and flush the radiator, it's going to cost me between $300 and $400. I can do the whole thing myself for less than $100. My time, of course, which I'm not costing into it, but nonetheless, so I can maintain an older car and keep it on the road in terms of repairs and maintenance and oil and everything else for $1,000 for the year. But it would cost me $5,000 if I was getting it repaired and serviced by a certified mechanic. Now, some of the stuff, changing the oil, I mean, you don't need a fucking certified mechanic for that, and nor do you need for a lot of things. It's not necessarily expertise driven. Sometimes they've got the diagnostic equipment that is expensive to buy, but they can amortise it over many hundreds of repairs, whereas I may not think that's worth to buy it at home. But anyway, the cost of ownership is the thing. You can do your own work in your backyard or in your garage, and that changes quite radically, drastically changes the economics of owning a second-hand vehicle. Let's suppose, though, that the government said only a certified mechanic can do any work on the car, and if you want to buy aftermarket parts, or any car parts for that matter, at your local automotive thing, you've got to prove that you're a certified mechanic and so on. Now, what this means is if governments, and I think they're heading towards this, Western governments, globalist controlled, stooge flunky governments, World Economic Forum governments, you'll own nothing and be happy governments, they're going to say, well, we've got to stop people having any independent means of transport. So we're running into a lot of opposition on cutting out petrol-driven vehicles, internal combustion engines. So we're probably going to have to push the timeline out on this. So we're saying 2035 there'll be no internal combustion engines. Politically that's going to be undoable. So we're going to have to say put the timeline out to 2049 or something like that, or relax the regulations in some way. So how are we going to stop these people? We want to stop people owning independent means of transport. 15-minute cities. Electric vehicles are really transport for the elites. The only people I know that are buying electric vehicles are the ones who are in an unusually good position financially. Some people nearby, they've inherited quite a nice house, and so they're all their mortgages and all their expenses to do with that. So they've bought an electric car. Would they have bought that electric car if they still had a mortgage to service, or if they still were paying rent or something? No chance at all. Nor would they have bought a new car. They'd have bought a used internal combustion engine car. And also other people, they're living in their $6 million house and they're buying an electric vehicle. So the only people I can see that are acquiring electric vehicles are the ones who are in effect have a degree of independent wealth. If you've got to actually work for a living and pay your mortgage and so on, you're looking at cost-effective, cheaper alternatives. That typically means a used vehicle. Now, for a lot of people, it's doing the work themselves. That makes the vehicle affordable. They're buying a cheaper vehicle, and their cost of ownership is a fifth or a sixth of what it would be if they were getting it done. This is different for people who have no mechanical expertise, or they don't maybe have the time or something. There's a lady that we know, she bought an affordable second-hand vehicle, but the maintenance cost was costing her over $5,000 a year in maintenance. So the relative cost of buying a new car, which she had to go and borrow money for under terms, the relative cost of buying a new car is comparable to what it was costing her to own and keep that older car on the road. So with a new car, she gets a longer term warranty and this sort of thing. So it's only the new car is only slightly more expensive in overall cost terms than the older car. But if you can do the work yourself, so what the governments, these globalist controlled governments want to do is say, effectively, you cannot service or maintain your own used internal combustion engine vehicle. and that's their way of choking off, of strangling off independent ownership of transport. I see this as political and ideological. Now they'll argue that backyard mechanics don't repair the vehicles to a high enough standard, and therefore it's going to, little girls dressed in pink will die by the millions, if not the hundreds of millions, probably the trillions, if we don't do so. So they'll dress it up as something like that. Women are being oppressed, and so. But the reality is they just don't want people having independent means of affordable transport. So the elites will drive around in electric vehicles, and the rest of the masses will live in 15-minute cities using public transport. My concern is it takes away choice, it takes away market conditions and market forces. Why not make car maintenance more affordable for the people? Why not bring down the price of used vehicles? Why not make other measures to make people's lives better? Why go direct? Why just pursue an ideological direction without raising the standard of living of the people? But now I don't know. In public transport, where we live, the public transport is pretty ordinary. It's a decent drive. You can't walk it. It's a decent drive to, as a round trip. Just say you're using public transport. We are. It's a 10 to 15-minute walk to the nearest bus stop rather. The bus takes 30 to 35 minutes to get to the nearest train station. Assuming you can get a good connection, but let's just divide the waiting time. Trains run every half hour, so let's assume you're waiting 15 minutes. So it's 15:50. It's just an hour and 5 to an hour and 10 minutes from my front door till I'm on the train and moving, to wherever. Now, if it's to the nearest major city, that's another hour and 10 minutes. So just a round trip. From my front door back to the front, this is assuming using public transport only, would be 1, 2, 3, say between 3 and 3.5 hours. This is assuming you get the connections on the train. Whereas I can outside of peak hour, at least I can do that journey in easily less than half the time. But the material point of this is that the public transport infrastructure doesn't exist. So in areas that are not densely populated, then how are you supposed to move around? Well, this would mean, therefore, that ownership of a motor vehicle would have to depend on the population density of the area you lived in and the spread of public transport. Or the government's going to decide who can live where and under what circumstances. There needs to be a lot of other things, all of it tantamount to concentration camp type stuff, of forcing people, you've got to live here, you've got to live in this density, you have to, so personal choice is going to be removed. Like by just preventing people from owning the means of transport, which is clearly the intention here, I believe at least, by preventing that or limiting it or making it so expensive or so unachievable that people just can't do it, and doing so not through market forces but through artificial means, then they're going to have to do many other things in order to make the whole mosaic come together and work to any practical level. And this is going to, so if just for every single act by the government that imposes ideology, they must have then several other ideological impositions must follow it in order to put that ideological insanity together. It's pretty scary stuff. You've been with Tacit Estate, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.